Dianne. Welcome to the Real Housewives of Alaska.
And this is Marnell, and I'm not like a regular teenager. I'm like a 40-year-old teenager.
Oh my god. I thought you weren't going to have anything sassy to say about this because it was so inappropriate for you to say anything sassy,
No,
but here we are.
it wasn't. But I'm on the Facebook algorithm now that I get the funny t-shirts, and that was my favorite funny t-shirt of the day because it's kind of a quote from Mean Girls, except for
Oh.
they turn it into I'm not like I'm not a regular mom, I'm a cool mom. And I was actually just thinking the other day, like, sometimes I feel like such a teenager, like with like spending hours on TikTok and like, the makeup and stuff that I do for absolutely no reason because I don't go anywhere. Sometimes I feel like a teenager, and I'm like, I'm a 40-year-old teenager. And like, because Facebook algorithms like read your mind, that's the shirt that I got.
Okay. You know why I feel like a teenager? Because I'm acting like a teenager right now.
You
And
are.
you know what algorithms I get on Facebook. And it's not just makeup and eyelashes.
No, it's not. But yeah. Yeah, it's quite different from the algorithms. Etsy just recommended a lamp to me the other day, and it was in the shape and looked like the puzzle box from Hellraiser. So that's my
Oh,
algorithm.
that's kind of cool.
It actually was cool. I took a screenshot of it. Like,
That's kind of
I was like,
cool. How come you didn't buy it?
okay. I'm like, I don't know if I can have that creepery in my house, but it's super awesome.
Oh, yes, you could. It's not like having a Ouija board in your house.
I actually, when I
Oh my
worked at
god,
the
are you going to
theater,
tell me you have a Ouija board?
no, no, no,
Oh,
no.
okay.
When I worked at the theater, we got like Christmas packages from during our Christmas party, and we'd always watch, a Christmas movie at the party, and it was on the big screen and everything. And the Christmas packages were always like movie memorabilia stuff, the promotional stuff that they send to theaters. I got a Phantasm clock, the horror movie Phantasm.
Mm-hmm.
I love the horror movie Phantasm. I cannot have that in my house.
Oh,
Like,
that's funny.
dude, I
'Cause
am
you
41 years
actually
old.
really strike me as someone who doesn't get disturbed by stuff like that. I get disturbed by stuff like that.
Okay, I still have problems with Freddy Krueger nightmares.
Which actually kind of surprises me too, because I know you watch it every time you stumble across
Every
it.
time. I can't not. Yeah, it's a abusive relationship that Freddy Krueger and I have going on. Yeah.
Oh my god, that is so funny.
So speaking of abusive relationships, what a great parlay.
So, yeah.
Murder to Mercy, the Cyntoia Brown story.
I'm going to let you say that again because I think I overtalked you.
Okay, Murder to Mercy, the Cyntoia Brown story. It's currently on Netflix.
So it was released on Netflix in April of last year.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, so we'll get more into this as we get further into the director and all that kind of stuff. But apparently this was basically footage from the director's first documentary about Cyntoia Brown, kind of parlayed into a new documentary. And she did not support it initially,
Yes.
which kind of surprised me because you would not know that from watching this.
No, you wouldn't. And she actually did delete the tweet that she kind of spoke out against the documentary. And the initial thought, I think, is that because she was not paid or compensated for basically the additional documentary, they used mostly footage from the 2011 documentary and other archived footage.
So the 2011 documentary was an independent film documentary, Independent Lens, which is an NPR property. NPR. PA Public Broadcasting, not NPR. I don't think she has, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think she's ever been compensated for anything she's done.
No, and I kind of have a feeling. So it was April 15th before the documentary came out that she tweeted, "My husband and I were surprised as everyone else when we first heard the news because we did not participate in any way," she said, although the tweet has now been deleted. Um, I think it is probably because she was already working on her book.
Ah,
And
okay.
probably thought it may cut into her book sales. And I will say that I am super interested in reading her book, or at least listening to it on audiobook, um, because not because, but it's her side of the story. It's her telling her own story beyond the trial, and it kind of the one person that I saw interview her kind of described it as like graphic and disturbing and very, shocking.
Oh, her book?
So, mhm.
Interesting.
So it's $12.99 on Kindle and
Excuse
between
me.
14 and $16 if you want a paper copy.
Hmm. Very interesting.
Yeah. So what did you rate it?
Well, I'm going to say I rated it probably lower than you did, and I'll have an explanation in a moment here. So I rated it 3.5 clasped hands out of 5. And the reason that I rated it so low is because it's no Paradise Lost.
Right.
So,
Right.
in the genre of true crime documentaries, it's not the best true crime documentary I've ever watched. Not that the subject matter isn't compelling, not that her story isn't tragic and compelling. Just when I look at purely as a true crime documentary, it's not the best true crime documentary I've ever seen.
No, for me, it wasn't the true crime aspect that drew it to me. It's the injustice aspect. Just the whole story surrounding she was a child, she was a trafficking victim, and she is not the only one. This happens a lot, or has happened a lot, and the laws really, really need to be changed.
So, we're definitely going to talk about aspects of that.
Absolutely.
So, what was your
Um,
rating?
So I rated it a little higher than you did. I rated it a 3.8 family mental health issues.
Oh, so I find it interesting that you chose it and didn't rate it any higher than that. That actually makes me feel a tiny bit better. And we'll talk
Well,
about the
I
family mental health issues as well.
I kind of really think that I also need to go back and watch the 2011 documentary.
Right? The one
Yeah,
that kind of spawned it.
right.
Yes.
And again,
Although, really, seriously, are we going to end up with that on our list too? Probably not.
uh, she's turned out to be such an amazing person, and we will talk about that going further. But yeah.
Well, there's not much in the way of numbers. So I basically have the numbers from IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. So it is a 6.3 out of 10 on IMDb, which is fairly consistent with where, well, I actually rated it a little higher. If you extrapolate the numbers, I rated it a 7 out of 10. You rated it higher
Mhm.
than that. It is 79% on the tomato meter, which is the critics meter. And then it's a 44% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, so relatively low.
So I think probably the Cyntoia speaking out about the documentary against the documentary probably factored into that because there was a lot of once she tweeted about it, there was a lot of people who I think it probably trended at hashtag boycott Cyntoia Brown story or murder mercy to murder or something like that or hashtag boycott Netflix or something. So it did have a pretty big backlash after she spoke out about it.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I just
Yeah.
assumed it
So
was people who had the reaction I did, which is it's no Paradise Lost. So, you know,
God, that makes me want to do that one now.
we might actually have to do that one because it was so good.
Are we turning into a true crime podcast?
No, we're not turning into a true crime podcast because, my goodness, we did Assassination Nation and A Promising Young Woman. And Hail Satan, really, which is not crime.
Those were
right.
Those were fictionalized.
Right,
crime.
That's what I was saying. We're not turning into true crime. No. Okay, so I thought that the title was fairly straightforward, Murder to Mercy. It's basically Cyntoia Brown's journey.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really have anything beyond that.
No.
There is no writer in this case, but the director is a guy named Daniel Berman, who actually is the guy who was responsible for the 2011 Independent Lens documentary called Me Facing Life, Cyntoia's Story. And so Independent Lens is actually, as I said, a PBS property. I've actually watched a couple of really good Independent Lens films, including the one that we can't seem to find to watch again, which is A Family Undertaking about home burials.
Oh,
I really wish we could do that, but I can't find it anywhere for us to stream. And he was also credited for a TV series short in 2016 called Sentencing Children. And what it actually turns out that it's a 7-part documentary that was produced on Independent Lens. And the first one is the 2011 property that was done about Cyntoia.
Ah, okay.
And this TV series short from 2016, the 7-parter, is basically all about criminal justice in Tennessee dealing with children.
Yeah, they seem to have the most harsh punishments in the nation for dealing with juvenile offenders.
I think that's what they said in the documentary.
Yeah.
And then so he's got 13 director credits, and the very last thing, the most recent thing that he was credited for, is a thing called St. Patrick's Greatest Gift. And he actually wrote and directed it. And the IMDb description of it is that St. Patrick's gifts to the Western world were literacy and the expansion of Western civilization. And I'm like, unless you're a pagan. I'm just going to say, as someone who has flirted with various forms of paganism throughout her life, St. Patrick is kind of seen as not a good person. Like, the whole allegory of driving the snakes out of Ireland is actually Patrick driving the pagans out of Ireland.
That's terrible.
You didn't know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's what that actually means.
Wow.
So there are
this is why you and I would make a great trivia team.
Right? So there are some of us who actually think that St. Patrick can take his literacy and shove it. So that's what I have to say about Daniel Berman's latest documentary. Although it wasn't the best true crime documentary, I'm not sorry that I watched it. I mean, I know I messaged you about halfway through and I was like, meh. But there's an article on Decider about this, and their final take home, like the very end of their article, is our call, skip it. On one hand, Murder to Mercy shows how we've made some social and legal progress in our understanding of mental illness and the definition of sex trafficking. On the other hand, the documentary is a sloppy, surface-level glance at a story in need of a more meaningful analysis. I don't know if I would go quite that far.
And that's why I think that I probably liked it a little more, is because I have a tendency to take something and run with it and, like, research it ad nauseum.
Right.
And so, it's kind of like, I don't like to watch a show until I can binge the whole thing. I don't like to read the book until I can read the whole series. When I get interested in a subject, like, I go all in, on that subject. And,
I would say it depends on the subject for me.
That's true. I mean, if it makes me interested in the subject, and this certainly did make me interested in the misjustice system, right? Unjust system, whatever you want to call it.
So I have to tell you that there are a couple of books still on my Kindle Just Mercy is one of them, and it's a book about criminal justice reform and about being someone who I believe was unfairly sentenced. I don't know a ton about the story because I've started it and stopped it and started it and stopped it, and it got made into a documentary. And there's another book along the same lines. I wish I could remember the title, but I don't. But it's also a book about criminal justice and criminal justice reform.
Yeah. And I mean, you should probably like see my Netflix watch history. It's all the oh, what was that case where the guy has been completely railroaded? Oh, it was a famous case. He was originally charged with the rape of a woman, and they found out like 15 years later it was not him. Like, it was proven by DNA. They caught the real guy. And I mean, unfortunately, he really, really did look like the original perpetrator. But so he gets out of prison and he sues the county or whatever, and he wins. And then all of a sudden, this woman is murdered and her body parts are found on his property.
Oh, wasn't it Making a Murderer?
Yes, Making a Murderer.
I thought there was quite a bit of controversy about him.
There is a ton of controversy about him, but if you look at the evidence objectively, I'm not saying that he did not do it. I'm not saying I do or don't believe that he did it. But given the evidence that was presented in court and the things that were withheld that were not, they were deemed inadmissible in court, I think unjustly, I would not have convicted him. And it's all about innocent until proven guilty. And he did not get a fair trial. And so,
didn't they make a second season?
They did, yes.
And have you watched the second season?
I have, and I don't remember much about the second season. Watching the Cyntoia Brown story last night, it actually, Netflix kind of gives you recommendations based on, you know, what you've just watched. And we actually wound up watching a case where there was some sort of commutation of sentences in Texas after they put a hold on the death penalty. And a man, there was like, out of the hundreds of people who had been sentenced to death, there were 7 cases where something about their case garnered them basically immediate parole. Like, it's weird to go from death penalty to you're paroled. You know, like, it doesn't seem right. They explain it in the movie, but like, listening to this guy's story, it's like, okay, you know, he found God in prison, and like, he's done all this other stuff, and it seemed to be heat of the moment crime, and he was young. He was in his early 20s, so he wasn't a teenager. And it was sort of, had it been a thing back then, it might have been called the gay panic defense, which is bullshit anyway.
Right.
But I mean, this was like the mid 60s. So, I came away from the story going, okay, maybe he didn't deserve the death sentence. He served like 37 years in prison, which I you know, he's turned his life around and he seems like an okay guy. I actually think that he was kind of a pompous ass who tried to basically explain away his crime with the gay panic defense. And so I came away with squicky feelings about him. So I'm not saying that every documentary out there that results in people being, you know, released from prison, those people are good people, but there are definitely huge issues in our criminal justice system at every level, every single level, from the police to the courts to the prison systems to the parole system. Every single level has issues, and we throw so much money at it. The state of Alaska actually just passed a really auspicious line the other day in that we now spend more money on our prisons than we do our universities. Makes no sense to me because our prison systems aren't doing any good. They're not working. They
aren't. And you know that I have had and continue to have association with the prison system professionally and personally. And I mean, I still have friends who work in the prison system who are like, this is a bad deal.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It does not serve the way that it should. It does not serve as a deterrent, and it does not serve as, what's the word I want? Helping people.
Reformation.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I will tell you, so when the ex interviewed to work in the state prison system, they said to him, don't be talking to us about any of that crap like reform or rehabilitation or no. Don't be BSing us about that.
Nope. Yep. And it seems like district attorneys and prosecutors and police, the police just want an arrest. They want a book. And district attorneys and prosecutors just want to win in their books, you know. Nobody wants a loss. Nobody, you know.
And, you know, I will tell you that the people that I know who give a damn, the people that I know who I think are worthwhile people who work in the prison system, they really, and this includes the ex, and you know I don't say very many things about him being worthwhile anymore. The people that I know who are worthwhile in the prison system really are like, ugh, this is not okay.
No.
And you do need to rehabilitate people. We need to be here to rehabilitate people.
Yeah, because the fact of the matter is that no matter what, almost no matter what you're sentenced for, whether it's, you know, petty theft or it's, you know, manslaughter, assault, rape, things like that, the vast majority of these people will get out someday and they will live among you. Do you want somebody that has been hardened by the system and probably made into a bigger criminal while they were inside than they were to begin with?
Oh my God. So many times they become so much better criminals. They do. They totally become better criminals.
Or do you want somebody who has received drug and alcohol treatment? Do you want somebody who has received therapy for any mental disorders or issues they have? And education and job training and life skills. Which would you rather they have? You know, do you want to punish them or do you want to rehabilitate them so when they get out of prison, they don't reoffend because they're going to be living next door to you?
It's funny that you should bring that up because I can't remember exactly where I watched it, but I watched a documentary where they talked a little bit about prison reform or prison systems in other countries, and I can't remember which Scandinavian country they were talking about, but they actually showed a warden talking to a group of new admits. That's a medical term. I can't remember the new remands. I don't know the word for sending them to prison. Anyway, and the warden is like, hey, we don't have life in prison here. We don't have the death penalty here. Someday you people are going to be my neighbors, and I want you to be good neighbors, and I want to offer reform to you while you're here.
Yeah. Yeah. Michael Moore actually did a documentary about Norwegian prison, and I actually watched a couple documentaries about inside the world's toughest prisons, and there was one. It wasn't the toughest prisons. It was basically prisons in other countries, and and I'm sure it was some Scandinavian country where the prisons were basically college dormitories where, it literally looked like a college dormitory. They had regular furniture. It wasn't steel stuff bolted to the floor. It was wooden fabric. And they were all allowed to make their own meals with knives, and
what documentary did Michael Moore do?
Michael Moore, there's a thing on YouTube, Norwegian Prison, Michael Moore.
Huh. Interesting.
Oh.
Sorry.
I do not have my volume down.
I almost snorted a screwdriver out of my nose. And I'm not talking about the tool.
Well, for me, it would be a sea donkey, so that sounds even weirder.
I'm sorry, what exactly does that mean? What are you inferring?
The sea donkey, the one from the local distillery that I have absolutely fallen in love with.
Okay.
It's
is that
juniper
vodka?
gin?
Oh.
Juniper gin, ginger spices, water, and carbonation. And I don't like ginger, and I don't like gin. So I don't know how I like this drink so much.
I didn't love gin until I was quarantined, and then I was like, gin.
It's funny. Nobody liked gin until Prohibition, so it's kind of like, take what you can get.
Then it was like, bathtub.
Right? Let's try making it in the bathtub.
You can only get so many potatoes during Prohibition.
Oh. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I picked this film is because it did focus a lot on the issues specifically with child sentencing laws in Tennessee, but it opens us up to a kind of a broader perspective of the criminal justice system as a whole. Which kind of brings us to our Housewife's hero.
Yes, which I was so glad that you caught his name, because I will be honest and say I wasn't paying enough attention to catch his name. So
I chose Preston Shipp, and you don't really see his name until about 5/8 away through the documentary. It's there's 20 minutes left of the documentary before we really get to Preston Shipp. But he is a former prosecutor, and he was the one that denied Cyntoia Brown's appeal, her petition for appeal, not having known her. So Preston Shipp served as an appellate prosecutor for Tennessee Attorney General's office. While serving as a religious volunteer and teaching college classes in Tennessee's prisons, he became a good friend with many people who were incarcerated, one of whom he actually prosecuted. These relationships caused Preston to wake up to many injustices that were present in the American system of mass incarceration. Preston felt increasing conflict between his faith in Jesus, who was executed as a criminal, and his role as a prosecutor, which required him to argue for the punishment of people he did not know. Unable to serve two masters, Preston left his career as a prosecutor in 2008. Since then, he has taught at universities and churches, lectured at conferences, and written about the urgent need for criminal justice reform, a shift in how we regard imprisoned people, and a new vision of justice seeks healing and transformation and reconciliation, not merely the infliction of suffering. Preston's conversations from prosecutors and criminal justice reform advocate has left him convinced that his salvation is bound up with his friends behind bars. Preston lives in Nashville with his wife Charisse and his three children, Lila Joy, Ruby Faith, and Levi.
So I actually saved the article so that I didn't write my hand off. And he is now working. He's now working for the Campaign for Fair Sentencing of Youth, an organization devoted to eliminating extreme sentences for young people and fighting for their right for a second chance. And he and Cyntoia Brown are still good friends.
Mm-hmm. So his campaign has helped more than 600 people who were told as children they were going to die in prison, regain their freedom, and go on to live full lives as valuable members of their communities. 600.
Wow.
That's just the people that he has helped and that have gone on to live their lives.
No, I really enjoyed seeing him. Like, he was probably one of my favorite parts of the documentary. Mm-hmm. And it was a small part, but I enjoyed seeing him.
Yeah. So he has written many articles. One of them, he wrote, "Victim of human trafficking must be treated as victims," for Huffington Post on 1/29/16, and he talks about his basically his encounter with Cyntoia Brown that caused him to sort of start rethinking, that he is condemning these children without having even known them. It was him getting to know her through these classes that he was teaching and knowing her even after he realized and she knew that he was the one that denied her appeal without even knowing her. And she continued to come to his class. She didn't hold it against him. And their friendship blossomed, and he saw basically how wrong he could be about someone, just based on the quote unquote facts of their case. Let's see. He could be found at Preston_ship with 2 P's. And his Twitter account is full of advocacy for basically passing reform for the strict sentencing in Tennessee and other states. There's all kinds of super interesting facts, really sad facts. Maryland must pass HB 409. 87% of people who have served over 20 years for the crime that they have committed as a child are Black. They have a racial injustice problem.
Yeah, I mean that's not news, sadly.
No, it's not. But I mean, you just have to keep saying this stuff over and over until something gets done, because the injustice continues. And I'm totally going to talk about
injustice.
Somebody who I think needs to retire.
Okay. Well, so anything else about Preston Ship?
No, that's what I got on Preston. I think people should probably follow him if they're interested in social justice and criminal justice. Preston_ship with 2 P's.
So he's pretty awesome. I'm super, super glad that we talked about him. I have a little bit more about life after parole for Cyntoia Brown. So I read 2 different things. I read that she was married while she incarcerated, and then I read that she got married after she was released. So I don't know which is true.
I read that she was married shortly before her release. I maybe it was one of those, because she knew about her release in August. She knew about it in the prior January. August of 2019,
Right.
she will have served 15 years. And so she found out in January that she would be released in August. So I kind of have a feeling that maybe it happened during that time between January and August.
So she married a guy named Jamie Long, who apparently is a Christian rapper.
Mm-hmm.
And they are, by all accounts, quite happy.
Yep.
She wrote and they talked about this in the documentary, but she wrote a memoir called Free Cyntoia. And she actually has been a guest writer for Washington Post several times since her release.
Yes, I did read one of her articles, and she specifically cites a couple of cases.
That sounded like Dexter.
I'm not sure which one that was.
That sounded like Dexter. I would know that voice.
Yeah, so she has gone on to write about criminal justice system and the juvenile system as a whole, and then she also writes about and talks about specific cases. I did listen to her TED Talk that she recently did.
Ooh, would you post a link to that on Real Housewives?
Yeah, it's only 15 minutes.
That's okay.
It was not done like in front of an audience because, of course, she
COVID.
did it while in quarantine. So, yeah.
No, but that would be great. I would love to see that.
Yeah, I will post that. I will make a note to post that. So I'm not the lady who said, I have to check that out, and then immediately forget the title.
Oh my God, don't let me forget that I'm on the hook for watching The Stand 1994. Which, by the way,
I'll keep telling you.
Maz today said that he had not read the book. He had watched the 94 version and he really liked it. So he's getting ready to start the book via audiobook.
Ah.
Yeah. And I told him, well, so if you listen to our podcast, there's a drinking game. When Marnell says 1994 version / OG version, you drink. When I say in the book, you drink. So pretty much you're guaranteed to be ripped about a half an hour into the podcast. So there we are.
You need to buy your liquor at Costco, okay?
Which, by the way, I may have had a little bit of vodka tonight.
Just a little.
Just a little. Because I've decided that those of us who can't sublimate those desires through vodka. All right. I've got a couple of other things for Real Housewives Weekly. Washington State chapter of the Satanic Temple lost a lawsuit in February, a cyber squatting lawsuit, and I had to look up what cyber squatting meant. So cyber squatting, yeah, you probably know because you're hipper than I am. So cyber squatting is using or registering a domain name in bad faith with the intent to profit off of a trademark belonging to someone else. So what happened was a couple of former TST members basically hijacked the Washington State chapter of the TST's social media, Satanic Temple for people who haven't listened to our inaugural podcast. And the Satanic Temple Washington State sued them, and the judge actually threw it out saying that post-domain paths and vanity URLs are not protected. And I'm guessing what he means by he or she means by post-domain paths is like things like Facebook. Because, a domain is like specifically the web address, right? But a Facebook, I would think, would be like a post-domain path.
Who was it that I was just listening to on the QAnon Anonymous podcast, which is the podcast that talks about QAnon. They're not QAnon. They talk about how crazy QAnon is. They were talking about somebody. Oh no, you know what? It might have been on TikTok. A guy found out that the Church of Scientology did not reserve the Church of Scientology on TikTok, and
no
so that
way.
is now his
Seriously?
TikTok handle.
That's funny.
And he totally rips the Church of Scientology. And he's even been like followed and investigated. They've doxed him. And he's like, I don't care.
That is
He's like, I'm not
seriously
giving it up.
funny.
Yep. So yeah, you know, though, I think you can still, like, it's not just their social media, because like there were people when I think it was probably Joe underscore Biden or something .com, and it was like somebody bought that domain and redirected it to like Nambla or something.
Ugh,
You can buy any domain name
you
and
can.
redirect it anywhere.
You can. Yep.
Yeah. So, and people do that all the time. It's not just one side. Like, I think somebody did something similar to Ted Cruz. So
Oh my God, that's actually kind of funny.
it is. So yes, I'm very familiar with cyber squatting because I've thought about doing it to a couple of people. Not the Church of Scientology, hail Zeno.
That is so funny. Oh my God. All right, I've got quite a bit of news about promising young women or young woman. So it's swept, quote, swept, according to the article, the Hollywood Critics Association Awards. So Carey Mulligan got a Best Actress award. Emerald Fennell got Best First Feature and Best Original Screenplay. Good Lord. I'm not speaking very well, and I'm not even that far into my cups. So she got 2 awards, Best First Feature and Best Screenplay, Original Screenplay. The movie also got awards from the Women's Film Critics Circle Association. So Carey Mulligan again got a Best Actress award, and the movie also got a special award for opposition to violence against women, and it's called the Adrian Shelley Award.
Wow.
And then they also won Best Film at the Australian Academy of Cinema and Television Arts. So, girl, you and I are not the only ones who liked A Promising Young Woman.
No, it was a really good movie.
I am still saying for anybody who has not listened that they totally need to watch that movie.
Unfortunately, it is still $20 to watch on the various streaming platforms. Like I said, we'll try and keep track of it. And if the price drops, we will totally let you know where you can watch it. But I personally think, having not been to a movie theater in over a year, get used to paying $20 for movies. You know? It's cheaper than going to a movie.
Yeah, it is. It's cheaper than taking 2 people to a movie. It's not cheaper than going to a movie by yourself, but it's cheaper than taking 2 people to a movie.
I don't know. I really like the theater nachos. The price of a ticket and theater nachos with extra nacho cheese and a soda is $20.
Yeah, but can you really drink a screwdriver in the theater? That's all I'm saying.
I do believe that in Skagway, their theater there is a small theater, but they serve alcohol.
Oh, hail Skagway.
Yeah, like, so and I guess there's other places down south that do that too, where you can get alcohol at concession.
There is a theater called The Brew. The Brew. Oh, good God. Would you just fire me? You need to fire your co-host. Good Lord. There is a theater called the Bear Paw, which is a brew pub in Anchorage. But as far as I know, they only do beer. I don't think they do anything else.
And,
I mean, beer I like, but I'm definitely a Merlot, vodka, and gin girl.
Well, so usually it's in categories. Like our liquor licenses here are, you can have beer and wine is a super easy license to get. Most places that serve food can usually get beer and licenses to serve, but it's when you get into hard alcohol is when that, I mean, literally just the license, the opportunity for the license, because we only have so many in Juneau. If somebody is closing their establishment, they can sell basically their spot on the list of licensed places for $1 million.
Oh my God, that's insane.
Yeah, you don't get like the restaurant, you don't get any of the stuff, you just get the license. And I mean, you have to apply for it too. Like it's just they're basically selling you their spot on the list, and it's $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah, so that, and then actually having to open up a restaurant, buy all the stuff, hire the staff, like, yeah, there is a reason why Juneau is a food destination, because restaurants have to be really, really successful here to stay open. They have to have really, really good food to turn a profit. So,
do you remember the armadillo?
Yes.
God,
Tex-Mex.
I loved the armadillo. Delicious. They had the best nachos.
Mm-hmm. Taco Del Mar was kind of a ghost of the armadillo for me. It was like mission style Tex-Mex.
Wow, I am having a sudden desire for Tex-Mex. It's 8:37 on a Monday night, and I am having a desire for Tex-Mex, and I live in rural Alaska. I'm in big trouble.
Theater nachos and Tex-Mex food. Oh, I don't even know how we got here.
I don't know, but it's time for our good, bad, and uglies.
I think so.
So, is it my turn or your turn?
I had you go first on the rating, so why don't you go first on your good, your summer?
Okay, so my summer, my good, is actually pretty straightforward. It's the fact that she got clemency. Mm-hmm. So, I was definitely conflicted about the fact that this was not a great true crime documentary. But as I said when we started this podcast, I'm not conflicted about the subject matter. It's tragic. It's tragic that this young woman who was 16 when she committed her crime, which I'm fuzzy on the details of her crime. We'll probably talk about that in our bycatch. But the fact that she was so young, the fact that she was being pimped out, and the fact that she was mentally ill, FASD, and abused, all of those things just make the fact that she got clemency so much sweeter. Yeah. So mine is pretty straightforward, but mine is the fact that she did, in fact, get clemency, especially when 3 of the people who were on the hearing, the clemency hearing board, 2 of the 3 people were like, not so much. Yeah, so 2 people voted for not recommending her sentence for commutation. 2 people voted for commutation after 25 years, which means she would have served an additional 10 years to the already almost 15 she had served. And then 2 people recommended clemency. So it was a 6-panel board, and there were 2 that were really against her, 2 that were middle of the road, and 2 that were thumbs up. So, yeah. And I was really surprised that of the 3 they showed, one of the women was completely against it, and one of the women was after 25 years. Right. And only the old white dude was like, nah, I think this is too steep a sentence. Let her go. Yeah. And you and I have been on internalized misogyny correction kick. Okay, I've got to tell you, that woman on Crows of Anarchy was horrible. She didn't say anything after. No, she did not. Re-educated her. I'm going to tell everybody that Marnell and I are members of a private Facebook group called Crows of Anarchy, and this woman went on this rant, on this victim-shaming rant, and I was like, huh. So Marnell was like being really nice, and I got on and I was like, so you apparently flubbed the whole crone thing and completely missed the anarchy thing. And by the way, You're a horrible person, and this is what concerned trolling is. Because she was one of those women who was like, well, I'm concerned. Ugh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm
When you look like you've
concerned.
swallowed a lemon and you say, I'm concerned, fuck you. Fuck
Yeah.
you. And I also told her, I was like, you know what? It's our job to straighten each other's crowns, not to sink each other in service to the patriarchy.
Well, and so what really normally I do not get involved in Facebook arguments, and I
I
almost
try
kind of
not to either, but she was a horrible human.
I won't say that I started this one, but the thing that I posted on the Facebook post, it wasn't this woman's Facebook post, it was somebody else's, and I forget what they were talking about. It was something about rape or statutory rape or something like that. And I had just watched the documentary Roll Tide Roll,
Which
Roll
I
Tide,
have
Roll,
not
something like
watched,
that.
but you said it was about the Steubenville rape case.
Yes. And it is also on Netflix. And I
Oh
had
God, don't make me
mentioned
watch another true crime documentary.
I had mentioned that two of the girls that they interviewed that knew the girl from Steubenville, they went to the high school that the boys went to in the case, not the girl. These two girls were basically like, well, she has to take some responsibility. I mean, she did go to this party and get, drunk with a bunch of boys that she hardly knew. And I'm like, no. And so I was talking about, I can't abide victim shaming and, blah, blah, blah. And the lady who jumped on my comment and was like, well, I'm concerned that this girl, thought it was okay. Doesn't she have to take responsibility for her actions? I'm concerned about her drinking at a party to the point that she was blackout drunk and blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, so
We both had to
she was
explain consent to her.
yeah, I was like, one, she was a naive 16-year-old girl, which is entirely beside the point because you do not rape unconscious people. Like, teach boys not to rape. Don't teach girls don't get raped. I mean, okay, you can say be vigilant and protect yourself, but I said, I don't care if you are plastered, grinding on a guy all night on the dance floor, take all your clothes off, and then black out. Nobody has the right to have sex with you without your explicit consent.
Amen.
And active participation.
And I told her, I was like, drunk people can't consent, period, end of paragraph, period.
Yeah, I was like, okay, so I don't know what you do when you come across somebody who has passed out due to intoxication, but I make sure that they don't choke on their own vomit or wind up in a positional circulatory situation where they cut off circulation from the position they passed out on, because you can do that. You can pass out on an arm and like wind up losing your arm. And I get them a glass of water. Like,
right.
I don't strip all their clothes off and rape them. Like, that's not the first thing that comes to my mind when somebody passes out near me.
Unless
like,
you're one of the actors in A Promising Young Woman, or unless you're a complete creep.
It's really not that hard to avoid raping somebody.
But apparently it is.
There's a great post that Sarah Silverman shared on her Twitter a long time ago. She reposted it from something else, but it was 10 tips to avoid rape.
Don't rape.
And,
don't rape.
Yeah. If you think you're going to rape someone, use the buddy system to keep yourself accountable. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm so glad that, I don't want to say that she needed some sort of life intervention.
Oh, this young lady?
She should have been kept in, Cyntoia Brown should have been kept in juvenile court at 16 years old. If her case had been tried in juvenile court, they would have kept her until she was 19 years old. At 3 years, she could have gotten her GED, probably started college, received some counseling, probably some substance abuse counseling, and, been a productive member of society. She may not have been it turned out as wonderful because she spent 15 years in prison, so she had a lot of time on her hands to better herself. But I think keeping her until 19 would have done her a lot of good. And I mean, she did rob him. She did.
Although she did say in articles that I looked at that she did not want to go back to her pimp empty-handed, and that was why she robbed him.
Right. So, yeah. But I'm 15 years was good long enough, and I think I did read that 15 years would have been the sentence for second-degree murder. Because she was convicted of first-degree murder, which I also think is bullshit, because I don't think she pre-planned this. Yes, she had a gun in her purse, but her pimp sent her out to like go be picked up by strange men. I would probably have a gun in my purse too. So yeah, I'm very happy that she also was granted clemency, and I have to say, I am really surprised that she was, and that is my own bias.
Because you're biased against the criminal, quote, justice, end quote, system, or?
The governor, I cannot remember his name.
I can't remember his name either.
And it was because he was, I'm biased against him because he was a Republican. He is a Republican. He was at the, Bill Haslam, Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam. He was in year 7 of his 8-year maximum governorship, because they have term limits in Tennessee. And I think probably because this case garnered so much attention with people like Rihanna, Kim Kardashian, LeBron James, T.I., all tweeting about her story, I think that he probably felt a lot of pressure to take a deeper look at this case and find some empathy. But I'm glad that he did.
Yeah,
so,
I was surprised too. I mean, I'll be honest. I kind of had a feeling it was going to end up good, but
yeah. So my summer was the first documentary, which we have not watched, the 2011 documentary. Actually is what got her post-conviction attorney Charles Bone and J. Houston Gordon involved in her case. Charles Bone was contacted by somebody in her previous public defender's team contacted her and told him to go see this documentary that was playing at a film festival near him. And he did, and he immediately got a copy of the 2011 documentary and had J. Houston Gordon also watch it. And that's what got her post-conviction attorneys involved in her case, which are the guys that we see fighting for the next 7 or 8 years to fight for her post-conviction clemency. So, had it not been for the original 2011 documentary, her case would have just ground to a halt at some point in the appeal system, because this seems like it happens a lot, and she would just be one in a sea of many that would have gotten lost. And she would have been 67 years old by the time she was eligible for parole.
That's a horrible thought. And I didn't game out the math, and you're totally right.
Yep, 51 years minimum.
Wow, that's horrible.
Yep. And to do that to a 16-year-old, somebody who is just eligible, that we deem eligible to drive a car. They cannot vote. They cannot buy cigarettes. They cannot sign a lease. They cannot drink. legally. None of these things can they do, but we can convict them of and put them in prison for 51 years minimum. Yeah. So the 2000 documentary was my summer, or 2011 documentary is my summer, because it gave her the attention that she needed. And unfortunately, not everyone can have a documentary about their case and get the kind of attention that she got. But she seemed like the perfect person to focus in on because of the advocacy work and the mentorship that she is doing now. And of course, then there's Preston Shipp. You know, it turned his life around also. So, yeah, that's kind of why I don't the controversy surrounding the release of this documentary. I think there probably shouldn't be that much documentary or controversy because it's basically just a follow-up to the original documentary that the director did. And so, you know, look at all the good it did.
You know, it made me think of, again, Paradise Lost, because that was the documentary that got Eddie Vedder involved in demanding the West Memphis Three. Did I say defending? That's what I meant to say. And he was involved seriously throughout their defense and throughout their ultimate release through the Alford plea. And the fact that Kim Kardashian, Lana Del Rey, and Rihanna were all heavily involved in defending this young woman, it just made me think of Paradise Lost and Eddie Vedder.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't watch any of the Kardashian shows. I'm not a fan at all. But Kim Kardashian is the daughter of
Robert Kardashian,
who was on the Dream Team for OJ. And so
but she kind interestingly enough, he came to, according to the stuff that I've read, kind of came around to OJ is a really horrible person and I'm pretty convinced he's guilty. Even though he and OJ were old friends.
He did his job as a defense attorney.
Although it sounds like he was pretty conflicted about it toward the end.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm good with that. I'm totally okay with the fact that he was conflicted with it because OJ's a monster. But we have, that is one thing that is good about our system is we have this system where everybody is entitled to a vigorous defense, and the defense attorneys in this case, they did their job very well. So Kim Kardashian is actually partnered with the Oxygen Network for the Justice Project, and she has actually been working on doing a show that kind of centers around these cases of criminal injustice. And she has even worked with Donald Trump to bring some cases to light that would hopefully get clemency or pardons. So I'm not a big fan of Kim Kardashian, but you know what? If you're going to use your fame for good stuff, good on you. Mm-hmm. I so would what have was to your agree with that.
What was your winter? What was your bad?
So my winter was, this is essentially the story of all women. And I say that to the woman who has chosen Assassination Nation and A Promising Young Woman as our last several films.
This isn't a man-hating film. This is a justice-hating film, or injustice-hating film.
It's a little bit of a man-hating film. You know, only in that almost all women have lived this story. Rape, molestation, abuse, exploitation. You know, you and I come from a history of abuse.
Yep.
You know, I have had more not more. I've had at least one partner who didn't take no for an answer. I was not date raped, but it was pretty damn close. Actually, I've had two. Now that I think about it, as a young woman, I had two encounters. One was where I was very intoxicated, and the only reason I wasn't taken advantage of was because someone at a party took care of me.
Mm-hmm.
So was it my fault? According to that woman on Crones of Anarchy, it was. It would have been. And then I had a consensual encounter that nearly ended in a rape.
Mm.
You know, and I mean, I'm 50 and I've seen so many women who have lived these stories. So that made me really angry, especially when we heard the grandmother and the mother and then Cyntoia. And I mean, it just, when is this going to stop? I understand that men experience abuse and rape, but men do not experience abuse and rape at the rates that we do.
Mm-hmm. And it is usually at the hands of other men.
Right.
That
If a
men,
man is being
yeah,
raped or abused, it's by another
yeah,
man. Generally
yeah,
speaking, yes, that's true. There are women who are rapists, there are women who are abusers, but generally speaking, it's a man violating another man.
yep. Or violating a woman. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was just that was profoundly painful. That was
Yeah.
profoundly painful. And then when um the grandmother says, and I mean her words are misspoken. She should have said I would have had a tubal ligation, but she said I would have had a hysterectomy because this should have ended with these genes should be ended.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
And yeah. Um, her mom, Centoya's mom was kind of interesting because
Cyntoia's mom or
I thought
Cyntoia's grandmother?
Centoya's mom
Okay.
because I thought it was interesting that she didn't give Cyntoia up at birth. So she got pregnant at 16 years old, and she did not give Cyntoia up until she was 2 years old. The adopted mother did say that she was in and out of the adopted mother's custody for 18 months. But I just, yeah, having worked with Office of Children's Services and knowing the things that I have, seen for children in custody and parents who have children in custody and things like that, it's such a sad cycle of substance abuse, violence, neglect, and it just keeps turning. The wheel just keeps turning. And you have foster girls in foster care who get pregnant and their children are in foster care with them. And that's just, that's no way to start out life. It's no way to be in life, and it's no way to start out in life. And if people really want to put their money where their mouth is, become a foster parent. Adopt a child. You wouldn't believe and I don't want to say do it for the money, but people think that they cannot have jobs and be foster parents. You can. When a child who is like a child who is daycare age is in foster care, we not only pay the foster parent, but I say we, the foster system not only pays the foster parent, but they also pay for the child's daycare because the foster parent can go to work or has to go to work to maintain, because Alaska rates are fairly high. They're between like $700 and I want to say about $1,100 a month just for the foster care. And then Office of Children's Services also pays for things like clothing and daycare and other things. And of course, if you become a specialized foster care provider for children who have physical or mental disabilities, the rates just go up from there. So don't think that if you have a 9-to-5 job that you cannot be a foster parent. You absolutely can. And there's a ton of kids out there who need good homes. That's my spiel.
All right, what's your winter? You gave
So
us your
speaking of terrible
spiel. What's
men,
your winter?
speaking of terrible men, I would just like to highlight the antithesis of Prestonship in Jeff Burks, who was the prosecuting attorney on Cyntoia's case. He also spoke at her the trial that happened later, the appeal, when they went in front of the court, and he was like, "I have 8 years with this case, blah blah blah." He is a terrible human being, and I'm sorry. I know he is probably just doing his job, but the TED Talk that I will try to remember to post, Cyntoia talks about that the prosecutor in her case paraded a naked photo that her pimp boyfriend had taken of her in front of the jury as further proof of her guilt.
Where was this? Did I totally miss that
Was
because I was spacing
no,
out?
nope, it was in her TED Talk.
Oh
Um,
my God.
so I'm super interested to what she has to say about
Because,
Jeff
yeah,
Burks
that's
in her
totally how
book.
we're supposed to treat victims.
I don't know. I mean, it must have been covered up, but I don't know how you parade a naked photo of a 16-year-old in front of a jury as further proof of her being complicit in her crime.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
so this is not giving him a pass at all. Please don't think I'm giving him a pass. Um, I think the fact that she has gone from being seen as a murderer to being seen as a young woman who was trafficked might change the way the case was handled if it were to occur now. Not giving him a
You should
pass
say
at
that.
all.
So, an interview that he did with Fox 17 in Nashville, he is quoted as saying, "Today's laws classify children like Cyntoia Brown, who are sexually exploited, as victims, not prostitutes. Prosecutor Burks still says that the change should have no bearing. Quote, I think she did what she wanted to do, and unfortunately, on that night, what she wanted to do was kill him and take his stuff," Burke said.
Yeah, I completely disagree with him because we're looking at a 16-year-old, and first of all, we know that her brain is not fully developed at the age of 16.
Her pimp had just
Secondly,
gotten her high.
a pimp had just gotten her high, and secondly and thirdly, or fourthly, she was mentally ill. I think they misdiagnosed her. I think she actually probably has bipolar disorder. I don't think that she just has personality disorder. I think that she's got bipolar. I think the other thing is she is clearly someone who has FASD.
So, and I was kind of interested because FAS is one of those that sort of had kind of an evolving. The more we learn about it, the more we kind of can better classify the symptoms and the outcomes and things like that. And so now it's called FASD, which is fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Whereas originally it was called fetal alcohol syndrome.
Correct.
And I would wonder if that bipolar would sort of be one of those things that the bipolar would be directly linked back to the fact that her mother drank the entire time she was pregnant. So I would suspect that you are right in thinking that she has bipolar, but I think that would probably be in that spectrum disorder.
Yeah, when he was talking about when the psychiatrist that they started out with, who was looking at her, talked to her about being really depressed, and what are you like when you're really happy, and are you really happy a lot, and what do you like when you're frustrated, and angry, okay, really like those are all pretty classic bipolar trait, what she's describing.
Mm-hmm.
She may not be bipolar 1, she may be bipolar 2, but I really think that they actually missed the boat when they diagnosed her as borderline personality. I think she's probably bipolar.
So
That's my armchair diagnosis.
my armchair diagnosis is Jeff Burks is a sociopath. No sympathy. I just do not go and troll him on social media. I did not even look to see if he had any social medias, but oh my God, he is a terrible human being.
Okay,
Like,
can I rephrase that? The Real Housewives in no way endorse you trolling this man on social media. Okay, fixed it for you.
there you go. So one of the things that he said that I would like to point out, he said, a jury trial is not about giving a full and complete picture of the defendant's mental makeup. A jury trial is about whether or not the state has proved beyond a reasonable doubt the essential elements of the crime. And I'm paraphrasing that last part. I wrote it down wrong. But he's basically saying that somebody's mental state and mental fitness should have no bearing on the crime that they have committed. It is just the evidence in the case,
which is
the
not
gun,
true. It's totally not true.
It is absolutely not. I mean, we have all kinds of classifications in our system as far as like a crime of passion or in this case self-defense, and we'll talk a little bit more about whether or not this was self-defense and what you believe to be self-defense. But one of the things that goes into whether or not we prosecute someone and how harshly we punish someone is their mental state of mind. If somebody broke into my house tonight and threatened my life and I killed them, I shot them and killed them, I was in fear for my life, and I would not have shot anybody ever had it not been for the circumstances of the crime and my mental state at the time. I am not a danger to society. I'm not going to go around shooting other people. It's the specific state of mind that you have at the time of the crime. And in a lot of cases, the mental fitness of somebody to know whether or not what they were doing was right or wrong, and the consequences of their actions. We see it all the time. And this guy is blatantly stating that no, that should have no bearing on whether or not somebody is guilty or not. Oh, he's terrible. I hate him. He's my bad. He's my winter. He should.
I want to know how you really feel.
Oh.
All right.
So what was your road construction, and was it good or bad?
It was incomplete, as we say on Capes and Lunatics After Dark. It was neither good nor bad. It was truly conflicted. And I actually thought this was the person you were going to choose as your bad. I was like waiting for you to go there. The victim, Johnny Allen. So I'm so conflicted. I mean, there's part of me that feels like we didn't learn very much about him. There's another part of me that immediately said, this is not his story. There was another part of me that said, he is not a good person who picks up kids after dark and takes them home to have sex with them. And then there was another part of me that was like, and the family friend who represented him at clemency didn't do anything to convince me otherwise. She was concerned trolling. She was truly concerned trolling.
So I do have to say that I did a little bit more digging into sort of who the victim was.
Oh, good. I'm glad, because I didn't. And like I said, I'm conflicted. I mean, there's part of me that's like, this isn't his story. I don't care. And there's another part of me that's like, a man is dead. And there's another part of me that's like, a man is dead and he was picking up 16-year-olds. And
Right.
negotiating sex for money with them.
So, at 43 years old, Johnny Michael Allen was a Tennessee real estate agent, and he was also a youth pastor and school teacher, Sunday school teacher. He started a homeless ministry at a local Baptist church.
Ugh. Sorry. Sorry.
So, now, having said all that, Jeff Burks, the prosecutor who I just talked about, stipulated that Allen picked Brown up to pay her for sex. And I am quoting, that was a fact from start to finish. So the prosecutor and the police agreed that he picked her up to pay her for sex.
Those are the people who were advocating on his behalf.
Yeah. Another minor who was a waitress at a local restaurant claimed that she and other young teens at the restaurant felt uncomfortable whenever they had to serve Allen. The waitress who testified in court said that he would hit on teens regularly.
Oh.
Yeah. So now you said your bad was your ugly was your broken construction was the victim, and whether or not he was an okay guy or not.
No, my reconstruction was more like, I don't know. Was he an okay guy? I don't know. Did I care? It's not his story. Did I care? He was picking up 16-year-olds. Yeah, it was conflicted. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. And so this is actually probably bycatch, but
that's okay. It leads us into, well, no, you still have your road construction to do.
Yeah. So the fact that his fingers, he was laying on his side away from her and his fingers were interlaced, I don't think that her story is entirely truthful in that he was awake and rolling over to reach for something.
Oh, I'm actually really glad you said that because, yeah, I'm not sure.
However, I do think that she was in fear for her life. She was a 16-year-old
who was high.
She had already said that he was acting kind of strange and had been showing her guns and telling her all these things about himself. And she, nobody knew where she was, who she was with. She's a 16-year-old who had intoxicants in her system. And here's this guy who is acting weird, who's shown her guns. Yeah, I would be fearful for my life. She had already stated that she actually wanted to stay downstairs, and I'm quoting, because it was closer to the door. She already demonstrated that she was scared of him. So even if he wasn't awake, I think that in her mind, if she tried to leave, he would have killed her. I think that's what she thought. Whether it was true or not, and like I said, I don't think that he was awake. I think that he was asleep, but I think she thought if she moved out of the bed and he woke up, that her life would be in danger. So that meets the definition of self-defense. There was actually a case where a battered woman, she had just been severely beaten by her husband, and he had either passed out and was no longer a threat to her, or he had left the house, but he said that he was going to come back and kill her. He was not a threat at the time that she actually killed him, but because of the circumstances of her state of mind, she got off because she was in fear for her life, legitimately. So
sounds kind of like The Burning Bed.
It kind of does, yeah.
Yeah.
Great Lifetime movie in the 80s.
I remember the story. I think I might have even read a book pertaining to it, but that was a big, bad, ugly
Blast from the
flashback.
past.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So your
my
road construction.
And it kind of has to go back to Cyntoia's mental state. If you watch her and the psychological interviews and her sitting in court in the beginning when she's 16 years old, there is no emotion. She is dead-eyed, stared. When she's telling the stories that go with the pictures, I forget what the name of the test is called. It's not quite a Rorschach test. It's telling a story that go with a picture.
Oh, right. I remember what you're talking about, though. Yeah, she's totally like not the human that she was later on.
Yeah, she gets a little animated in those, but when the psychologist is talking to her and asking her question, she is completely kind of a vacant stare, dead-eyed. She has no emotion. When she is found guilty, no emotion. Even the assisting attorney in her case was wrinkling her forehead every time they said guilty. She was wrinkling her forehead and like, I don't understand how you came to that conclusion. And her attorney, like, he kept blinking, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. And Cyntoia was just completely like, just, okay, whatever. And then later on, when she called her adoptive mother, she's like, Mommy, I got life. She didn't cry, nothing. She was telling her mother, calm down, all this kind of stuff. She was flat. I mean, there was nothing there in emotion. Now, later on, when she is at her commutation hearing, and she's had, I think at that time it was like 13 or 14 years. And she had gotten her GED. She had gotten a college degree. She had been through counseling. She had mentored young women in prison. At her commutation hearing, she cried. I mean, she almost started out crying and, was, thank you for seeing me. I know this is a huge privilege. And she had every emotion. She was happy. She was sad. She was thankful. She was, humble, all of these things this range of emotion that did not exist in this girl before this. It's just proof positive that she was a different person at 16 and she had a different state of mind. And
well, it goes back to what I was saying, which is your brain is not fully developed when you're a teenager. I don't care if you have mental illness and FASD or not. If you are a whatever perfectly normal means, perfectly normal teenager, your brain is not fully developed.
Okay, and it's funny. She actually talks about that in her TED Talk. She talks about how people have this hard time sometimes understanding that teenagers aren't fully formed adults. They can speak intelligently on a subject like, you can be sitting at a dinner table with your son and he's talking about which college he's going to apply for and what he wants to study and all these things. And then he goes upstairs and eats a Tide Pod because his friend challenged him to do it.
Right?
Yeah. Like children, teenagers are not adults. Their brains are still forming. And especially if you have had substance abuse issues, mental trauma, FAS, any of these things, everyone's got their own story and we all have a different level of understanding and ability, but teenagers are not adults. So that was my road construction, and I'm not going to say it's good. I'm not going to say it's bad, but it's just a larger part of the story that needs to be considered in every case. So now we're in bycatch, definitely.
Okay, so how do I feel about juveniles' cases being transferred into the adult court system? I'm horribly conflicted, and I will tell you why. So I look at cases like this, and I'm like, this is a horrible miscarriage of justice. But we had a case up here, I don't know, probably 5 years ago, where a young man, a teenager, was murdered by other teenagers, and they conspired to hide it. And I'm going to say at least two of those teenagers, maybe three, ended up in the adult corrections system when I was working there.
Mm-hmm.
I've got mixed feelings about it. I mean, there's definitely a part of me that was like, those little bastards should rot. And there's another part of me that's like, when I look at this kid's circumstance, how is her circumstance and the fact that her brain was not fully formed any different from the circumstances of these boys who ended up in the adult corrections system?
Yeah.
I mean, is it more sympathetic because the victim was another teen? And in the local circumstance that I'm talking about up here, is it more sympathetic or less sympathetic in her case because the victim was a 40-something guy who was picking up an underage young woman who was prostituting herself? It shouldn't be okay either way.
Yeah, and I have to say that probably this is why, every case has to be looked into on its own individual merits.
And they do actually say that in the article about Preston. Ship, the guy that we talked about earlier. They actually say that, where it's not saying that every case should be thrown out. It's that cases need to be examined individually in terms of circumstance.
Right. And one of the reformants that both Cyntoia and Preston have been working towards is this whole juveniles can be sentenced to life with the possibility of parole at a minimum of 51 years. And they're like, that is way too long. It needs to be re-examined long before that. Somebody obviously can definitely change in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. 51 years is just way too long as a minimum sentence for a teenager.
Agreed. And I think I've told this story before. I actually had a long conversation with an inmate when I worked in corrections who was institutionalized as a very young man. I believe that he was down for murder. We never did discuss his charge, and I really tried hard not to know the charges of the people that I was taking care of in medical because I didn't want it to influence the medical care that I gave them. But, I mean, we had a long conversation about how you are probably not the man now. You've been down for so long. You're probably not the man now that you were when you were incarcerated.
Yeah. So, and it starts even before they get into the court system. One of the statistics that was flashed onto the screen in the documentary was studies have shown that 90% of juveniles arrested in the U.S. do not understand their Miranda rights and speak to police without a parent or attorney present. I believe that the law needs to be changed, that police cannot speak to a juvenile without an attorney or parent present. If you cannot get a credit card or sign a lease at 16 years old, 17 years old, you cannot waive your Miranda rights. The police should not be able to talk to a juvenile unless they had been an advocate there for the child.
I can't argue with that. Can't argue a bit.
And it's not to say that, not to say that every kid's an angel. You know me, I'm not a kid person. But I do not think it is fair that there are adults out there who don't understand their Miranda rights. And the police are allowed to lie to you, to mislead you. They are allowed to tell you things that are untrue, which is the same thing as a lie. But sometimes it doesn't seem like that. It doesn't seem like they're outright lying to you. They can say that, we have you on video stealing that, whatever from the store, even though you didn't steal it. And there have actually been studies done where if you are in a situation of fully grown adults who know better, who are in a situation where if you say, is line A longer or is line B longer, and if the people around you are saying that the shorter line is longer, you will agree with them. And so if you have two, I want to say, physically intimidating adult men sitting in front of you saying, yeah, we'll totally talk to the DA and tell him you cooperated, and they can, it's just, it's awful. And so it all starts with, it starts right there with the police, and it gets worse from there with prosecutors like Jeff Burks and like the two people on the commutation board who didn't think that, Cyntoia was a different person than she was at 16, and still deserved to be in prison until she was 67 years old. Like we said at the beginning of the episode, every level is messed up. Every level of our justice system.
I'm thinking about our justice system and healthcare. So, that's my particular jam. Mm-hmm. So having worked in the correction system and now working outside of it, but seeing a lot of people who come over to our facility being directly discharged from corrections doesn't pay for a lot of their chronic health issues, and we end up paying more in the long run as consumers, as people who are taxpayers, as people who support the economy in this state, because it isn't dealt with early. Sorry, that is totally off topic, but that is totally my passion about corrections and corrections reform.
Well, and it's not totally off topic, because it was in the 80s that Reagan released a whole bunch of people from our mental health system, and we noticed
and they ended up being incarcerated. Yeah. And
so, I mean, we are mopping this spill from the bottom up and getting nowhere,
That is a great way to describe it.
The whole, what I said earlier when I said the state of Alaska is investing more in our prison systems than we are our universities. If we invested more in education and health, we would have to spend less on things down the road, like crime and our prisons. And so Juneau actually implemented, and I'm gonna get the name of it wrong, I want to call it like a wet center, not a dry center, where you have to be sober to be living in the facility. This facility is specifically for people with drug and alcohol issues who aren't getting treatment for those issues, but they're in a safe, stable environment. They're not out on the streets committing crime, becoming vagrants, things like that. And the police have noticed a significant drop in crimes related to drug and substance abuse issues, and things like public urination and defecation and things like that. And they're also in a place where they're monitored. So if they fall and hit their head or cut their head or something, they're able to get medical intervention earlier. And of course, with every medical issue, intervention at the earliest opportunity is always going to be cheaper than intervention, further down the line.
Absolutely.
And so Juneau is actually, they started this facility and everyone went, nope, this is not going to work. This is going to be a total disaster. And they've had to admit that they were wrong. And we are now building a second and third facility. And these facilities where people go in from the cold and get stable, and they are offered the opportunity to get treatment and counseling, a lot of people start to get their life together and they take those offers and they get sober and they get jobs and they move out of the facility into their own places and they become productive members of society. And, you can turn the wheel one way or you can turn it the other, and we are turning it the wrong way. Right now, with these facilities, we're turning it the right way, but it takes people, it takes lawmakers to take a chance and implement these sort of systems where nobody wants to spend money on drunks. Why are we building those facilities for people who are drug abusers? Well, because penny wise and pound foolish. If you spend the few bucks up front, it's going to save you thousands down the line.
Mm-hmm.
So your rant about health is completely valid in the criminal system. I could talk about this all night.
I know, right? and we're going to have to wrap it up soon because we've been talking for a long time, as we suspected we would.
Right?
Right. I am looking to see what else I have that we haven't talked about.
So one of the things I did want to say about Preston's Ship is one of the things that he said in the documentary was justice isn't about what crime is committed and how much time does that person get. Justice is about achieving the right outcome that is alleging that, and it's not alleging a rule of, oh God, I completely flubbed the line, but basically it should not be about punishment. It should be about serving a sentence that matches the violation, and getting, I think justice is more about rehabilitating the person that did it, I think probably most crime victims probably want the hammer to be dropped on the perpetrator. But again, in the end, most of these people are released from prison and they have to live among us. And would you rather someone who suffered under the thumb of the criminal justice system for however many years, or would you rather have them be someone who got help, got counseling, became a better person?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about that when we talked about Scandinavian prison systems.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wrote down that we haven't talked about is that the fact that 81% of criminal appeals in the U.S. are denied was shared in this film, and I thought that was shocking.
Our criminal justice system is so overburdened. And here's the other side of the coin of us ranting about how the system is so broken. The system has a lot of good people working for it, but the system is so broken and so bogged down that the people that are working in it can't do a lot to help it. They are still good people that are prosecutors and, working in public advocacy, working in clerks of courts. There's good judges. There's good cops. There's good prison guards. There are good people that are working in this system, but the system is so overburdened that there's no time to work on appeals. I mean, there are states where you have a rocket docket where defense attorneys literally get 2 minutes to talk with a client they have never met before after they're handed their file, and they have like another 2 minutes to argue whether this person should get out on bail, or whether this person, can have a third party get released to a third party, or whether or not, they should have to stay, and await 11, 12 months, 24 months for their trial. One of the things that wasn't talked about was she was in jail for 2 years before she was found guilty. 11 months before she even went to trial. So
I think, unfortunately, that's all too standard.
Yes, and I consider that quick.
Yeah.
And now with COVID backlogging the system because courts aren't doing in-person trials and things like that in most cases. They are still doing some courts telephonically, but that's for like emergency petitions and arraignments and things like that. But they are basically pushing things off to the future, and they have been since COVID started. And so the courts were totally backlogged before this, and now, it's going to be even worse. There was a case here in Juneau where the woman, she was in jail it was like a violation of her probation. And she was held in jail awaiting to go to court longer than if she had served her original sentence that she was on probation for.
I think, unfortunately, that's all too common as well.
I mean, it's so mind-bogglingly wrong. But you only see it when you see it on an individual basis like that. There are just so many. And so, again, it's mopping the spill from the bottom up, and it's, having to basically reform things that we arrest people for. There was actually just a state, and I can't remember which one, that was basically like, unless it is going to be some sort of, and I want to say felony violation. It's not, they didn't use the word felony violation, but basically if you have a blinker out, or if you're going 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, we're not even going to bother to pull you over because we don't have the time to deal with you anymore. And it's really crappy because that's just a snowball you don't want getting any bigger, because like, what other crimes get dropped after that? Like, when I had a freaking home invasion a couple of years ago. It's what made me buy my camera and alarm system for my house. I had somebody break into my home while I was asleep at night. And when I called the police, they were not going to respond because the perpetrator was gone and there was nothing that they could do. And what's really crappy is I'm like, yeah, I totally get that. Like, yeah, what are you going to do? They were like, we'll step up patrols in your area. Okay, thanks. Just know that I will shoot them if they come back. So.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
I even yelled at them when they were running out of my house that I was going to shoot them if they came back. So fair warning to them. But I mean, so it's all broken.
I don't have anything else to say. We've talked for a really long time about a documentary that I rated a 3.5.
I was going to say, I have a lot more to say, but we will leave it at it's all broken. I think that's as good as place as any to leave it.
I'm tired. I need to wash my new fake eyelashes.
are so extra.
I am such a girl right now. Oh my God.
Oh, all right. So it is your turn to pick the next movie.
I'll apologize now.
And we are luckily back on our regularly scheduled Housewives and one episode of Biters a week. You can go listen to, we podcasted early about the most recent episode of The Walking Dead.
And they have not been posted yet.
But by the time this is posted, they should be.
They will be.
And the final episode of The Stand, which Diane and I had very different opinions on.
Right. So it was called The Circle Closes.
Yep. So you can go listen to those.
But we loved Find Me. We both agreed about that.
Oh, definitely. But surprisingly...
Did you see that Brian didn't like it?
I was going to say, surprisingly, some of the fans did not like it.
Yeah, no. I'm hard in love with Lynn Collins, the woman who played Leah.
Yep. So go check those out and join us next time for whatever Diane decides to podcast about.
All right.
But until then, you girls, watch out for the weirdos.
We are the weirdos, mister.
We are. Have a good week, everybody.
Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.